We are officially past the halfway point, so let's talk about my seventh Booker book, and that is Enlightenment by Sarah Perry. Hello, book friends. It's Alyssa. Welcome back to the channel. Hello, if you are new. Welcome back to Booker Bonanza. I don't know. I've lost my mind at this point in the Booker reading long list review extravaganza. But yeah, so we're here for another review. You know the deal. If you've been here for the last 6 videos, let's talk about another interesting Booker book. There's a dust mote like flying in front of my face. This is my first of a batch of filming. I think you can tell because I don't remember how to do a review. So Enlightenment, spoiler, I enjoyed this, but also I don't think a lot of other people are. Here's my thoughts on Enlightenment. I think that if you liked Possession by A.S. Byatt, there's a chance you're gonna like this. If you thought that was like mind-numbingly boring, you're gonna hate Enlightenment. That's kind of like the best way I can shake out readers on this. But what the heck is Enlightenment? Enlightenment, it follows this man, Thomas, who lives alone. He writes for this local paper. He is very involved in the Baptist church and in where he lives, and he is kind of like this uncle father figure, second father figure to this young girl, Grace. She's raised by her father, who is like the pastor, reverend, whatever, at the church. Her mother died. Her aunt also raises her, and Thomas has sort of stepped in to some sort of weird familial role as well since all this occurred. So he's known her for like her entire life, essentially. And they have this really close bond. She's an incredibly pious person. Thomas has an incredibly complicated relationship with the church and God and all of that, mainly because of his sexuality. Thomas also becomes very enamored by this idea of this woman, Maria, who he thinks is the Lowlands ghost. She is an astronomer. I think that's the right word. A Romanian astronomer from the 19th century. That's what she is. I have some notes. I have some notes on the side. He's kind of obsessed with finding out about her, finding out about the comet she found, about who she was, what happened to her, her diaries, all this stuff. So the story sort of centers around this obsession he has over this dead astronomer. But in that, he develops this loving kind of crush respect for this other gentleman, James, that works as a museum curator. And they have a whole relationship, platonic relationship, but they have a relationship. Things happen between him and Grace, him being Thomas, and Grace, for them to have a falling out. And it changes the course of both of their lives in a lot of ways. And the things that bring people back together are finding out about Maria, about the comet, about seeing this thing for the last time before he dies, because this comet is going to come back again. It's a very beautiful book. It's a very contemplative book at times about things like religion and homosexuality, queer history. There's passages where Thomas is reflecting on all the friends he's lost during the AIDS crisis. And I found that incredibly just moving. And I think that this is the kind of quiet book where you're going to have those bits of it throughout, where, like Thomas talking about his friends that he lost during the AIDS crisis, where you're going to connect a little bit, and most readers are going to connect a little bit and enjoy it. But then the bits in between that link those kinds of moments, I think only certain readers are going to enjoy it. You're going to have to like a really quiet, beautifully written book. And you're also going to have to like a book that is contemplative on religion, that isn't necessarily religious, but does think and talk about God and what does it mean to have God in your life? What does it mean to have the church and the way the church is portrayed in like modern society? How do you reconcile goodness and godliness? There's a lot of really beautiful things in here, including the whole discussion of celestial bodies and astronomy and the sky and this like interconnectedness of the universe. And I thought it was lovely, but I 100% see why a lot of my friends who are reading this just keep telling me they're bored. Because again, if you read, this is my litmus test, if you read Possession by A.S. Byatt and wanted to like stab your eyeballs out because you were so bored, don't read this. Just don't do it. If you love that, I would read this. I thoroughly enjoyed myself. I thought it was beautiful. I I really need to read the Essex Serpent now, and I wonder how similar they are. It's also very hard for me to apparently say Essex. I don't know. I enjoyed myself, but it's an interesting pick. Again, I think there's a lot of things on this Booker list that I'm very confused about why, compared to some other things that were potentially like candidates for being longlisted. Why did you pick this? Why is this what you picked? Why was it not something else? And I think that the Disco King talks about this. Alex over on the Disco King, he talks a lot about this in his, I can't remember which review, but if I can remember, I'll link it below. But he's talking about how like one of the criteria that like the big head honcho Booker is using is that he's looking for books that had heart. And I don't know if that's really the I mean, yes, you can look for books that have heart. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't think that that in and of itself makes for an award-worthy book or a Booker-worthy book. I mean, Booker is like a really big prize generally in like the book prize sphere. It connotes a lot of value to you as an author and your books and sets you up for a lot of success further on in your career. And it's a big deal to be longlisted, shortlisted, and ultimately win a Booker. You should be kind of the best of the best, the creme de la creme of whatever it is you are doing. And a lot of what we've been reading, and I don't think that this pertains to Enlightenment. I think that Enlightenment is just the kind of book that like it doesn't feel like it should be on this because it just feels like a really nice historical fiction. We go from like 1997 to like modern times. So I think it's historical fiction, but I feel like a lot of these books are mostly just mediocre and there's nothing truly remarkable about a lot of them. And I don't know if they're doing this because they just want to set it up so that James wins. I don't know. But I'm very curious about Wandering Star, which just to go on a slight tangent, and that's where I'm going to end my Booker reading is on Wandering Stars because I feel like the two like big hitting American books on this list, James and Wandering Stars, are going to be the most interesting. They're going to play the most with their genres, with language, with just playing in the sandbox of literature really well, as opposed to just solidly sticking a mediocre performance. I don't know. I'm very confused by this Booker season. I'm just going to read you a little quote that I liked from Enlightenment so you can get a sense of sort of the reflective contemplativeness of it. This is right at the end. It says, this is Thomas speaking. He says, I don't understand it all. I've wondered all my life what I owe to love. There was a time I felt that because I loved a man, he was in my debt, that he'd made me love him, and so he owed me all his love in return. And now he is dead, and I can never receive even a part of what I gave. But the world turned, and I came to believe that all I owe to love is humility and gratitude that we were ever loved at all. You think it's humble to say it cannot be real, that she's mistaken since you're not free. But that's a kind of pride. Real humility is submitting with wonder and gratitude to being loved. Real wisdom is understanding how amazing it is, how improbable and really absurd, that she was summoned out of nothing, as we all were, and happens to breathe this air when you breathe it, and see this world when you see it, and that out of all her billions of fellow travelers, it is your word she waits for as she sits alone in her room. Well, that's a responsibility and probably a terrible one, and I cannot help you with it. You must work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, and let me work out mine. Kind of sums up really nicely the book and where we are. There's no clear answers on anything. There's no cut and dry. It's just beautifully written. We are doing this little bit of mystery with figuring out with this astronomer from the 19th century, what happened to her? What did she find? Why did she stop her diary and what she was doing? And it's a beautiful little mystery wrapped up in this story about people and God and goodness and religion and the celestial. And I enjoyed it. But I also don't know if it should be on the Booker. And that is going to be said, I feel like, more and more as we go through the reviews. Is that I have to wrap this up because I don't know what's happening downstairs with the dogs. I don't know if Mercy's nemesis is walking by or what. I think that I'm going to say that more and more with this list as we go through the books is that I even if I like something, I'm not quite sure if it's special enough to be on the Booker. And I don't know if that's just because I'm judging stuff too harshly, if I have expectations that are a little silly, or if other people are feeling this way, that even when something is fine or unlikable or enjoyable, that you're also kind of like, why? Why were there things that maybe push the boundaries of literature like a praiseworthy and they're not on this list, whereas other things are? I don't know. None of us are going to have the answers to that, but we just read these things and talk about them online, and we have no control over anything. Anyway, I'm going to stick this on the list probably closer to the top because I loved it. I don't know how far it's going to make it through Booker. I don't think this will get shortlisted, but we'll make a final tally at the end. Like I said in my first review, at the very end of all of these, I will show you my ranking and what I think will be actually shortlisted by the judges, because those are two different things. I'm going to wrap this up, figure out what's going on with the dogs, get to my next review. If you've read this, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let me know your thoughts also on Possession if you've read this, because I'd be very curious if my litmus test makes sense for this. Because so far, all my friends that loved Possession pretty much loved this. So it seems on my small sample size to work. Anyway, the children are being bad downstairs. I'll see you in my next review. Like and subscribe. See you in the next video. I don't know how to end this anymore. Goodbye.